Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're your hosts. I am Justin.
And I'm Challee.
This podcast is a space where we explore practical ways to nurture your mind, body, and spirit to create a happier and healthier life.
The content of this podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapist-client relationship. If you are experiencing emotional distress or mental health concerns, please seek support from a licensed therapist or a qualified healthcare provider.
Welcome back. Our topic for today is stigma surrounding mental health. I'm excited.
There's a lot to talk about with this.
There is. We might have to break it up into two. I don't know. No, we can do it.
Yeah.
All right. Stigma with mental health.
Where do we start? So I know just mental health in general has a really big stigma around it, and that impacts like the access to care. And many times it stems from whether it be our family or our environment that make it really difficult to get support. Doesn't always have to be professional support either. What do you think some ways that we can try and better help with the stigma?
Making a podcast and talking about mental health.
That's a great way.
But no, really though, just talking about it in a way that is normal, not in a hushed tone of talking about mental health. Like just talk. It's a normal thing. I mean, people talk about their physical health all the time. There is no shame. Sometimes people overshare about physical health and nobody bats an eye about it. But as soon as you start talking about mental health, it's like, well, wait, that's a personal, private matter. No, it's not.
Yeah. Kind of thinking about the relation with physical health, people always share the things that are going on. And those are things that you can normally see too.
Mhm.
If we break an arm, we're wearing a cast.
Ooh, yeah. Good point.
If we're feeling depressed, there's no sticker or no cast or sling for our brain. So nobody knows what we're going through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Physical health can be much more apparent. So then it's kind of a force that it's addressed as well. If it's not, then it can tend to be an elephant in the room, where with mental health, it's a lot easier to not have the opportunity to share it or feel like we don't need to share it because maybe we think people may not care, or we might think that people may not understand as much, which is fair.
I've also seen that it relates back a lot to strength, where like if I'm struggling with my mental health, it's because I'm not strong enough. And I don't want to have to admit that I'm not strong enough to deal with something on my own. And that is another part of that stigma.
So really black and white of it being a strength or a weakness,
Mhm.
when in reality, it can be such a strength or is such a strength to be able to share about the things that are going on, because many times it's done behind closed doors and then worse things happen. Or there might be a way to be able to resolve something even quicker when we share it with someone. We go to a doctor if we've broken our arm or an ER or wherever, and then mental health stuff can be just as complex. And then we think that we can just handle it all on our own. That can be really challenging.
For sure.
When thinking about mental health and specific populations, men dealing with mental health tends to
Yeah.
be much more stigmatized with and being able to gain access to resources. It might also be that we're discouraged from the people that we're working with or people in our environment. And then going back to that weakness piece, we might fear that we're not going to be taken as seriously, or we might lose an opportunity because we're dealing with something mental health wise.
Oh my gosh. I think there is such a stigma around just men and mental health in general. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but it starts young. It really does. Because me having a son, you have no idea how many times I have had people say to him, like, toughen up, like, man up. Big boys don't cry. Like, he's 5. Now he's 7, almost 8. But still, like, you don't tell a 5-year-old, don't cry because of your gender. That's weird. But still, it happens. And then I know, like, as far as adult men, they are told you do not show your emotions. You shove it down. Real men don't cry.
That's the quote that I was thinking of specifically.
And I can say that I have seen very few adult men come on their own willingly to therapy. And a lot of times it's not until they are at their last like it's either their significant other says you need to go to therapy or we're done, or they are in crisis and already
Experiencing those really big problems.
yes, whereas like, and I don't want to like put it into different boxes because it's not the same, but for everyone. But whereas the majority of my female adult clients, they will do it as more of a preventative measure where it's like, I'm okay, but there are things I need to work through. Whereas I see men use it more so as a crisis last ditch effort. And it shouldn't be that way. They shouldn't have to feel like they can only go to therapy when they're in a full-blown crisis.
I know with my experience working in addiction, it was very much that these men would think about times, oh, okay, maybe I saw that I had a problem. Maybe I saw that things were not as great, but I buried it down because I didn't know what to do. And then we bury it and we bury it. And then an explosion happens. At some point, it boils over and it sets that pace from a young age of, well, boys don't cry. Then moving forward, that just teaches us not to feel our emotion. And I know women have a degree of that too, maybe sometimes even on the opposite side of that. It's being talked about as huge emotions and having to tone them down. So both sides having some extremes, most definitely. But I know with men, it's normally life is blowing up. It's losing house, losing relationships, losing employment, those really big core things that men normally pride themselves on. When it finally impacts those things, then we're seeking help. And it's never too late, but there's some damage already done. So
Mhm.
then it can feel even more defeating when we've let it go. So being able to be that preventative measure.
And we could have prevented some of that stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, I have a loved one who's going through, drug rehab right now, and I begged him when he was younger to go to therapy because he did have some trauma in his childhood and he did have mental health concerns. And I remember before he turned to substance use, I said, like, I really wish you would just see someone and talk about it and process through everything that you went through. But he didn't because he's a guy and he's tough and he didn't need all that. And unfortunately, the only way he could cope with it was turning to drugs. And now his life has spiraled. So, and now finally it's like, oh yeah, maybe my childhood trauma did have an impact. But I'm like, yeah, but we didn't have to wait to get to this point.
And I think so many times that is pushed down of, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I got through it. It's fine. How we talked about the trauma piece, it has lasting impacts. At some point, when we get to a point in our life that we're just continuously triggered because of the things that we've experienced, we're not even able to think with our right mind to be able to get out of these situations or to prevent the next one. It becomes that cycle of one thing after another. I couldn't deal with this first one, so then the next thing got out of hand, and then the next thing, like dominoes, it just continues to fall apart, for lack of better term. When thinking about stigma with mental health, substance use, there's so many different areas that stigma shows up in this, but being able to break it down and have it be more human because people go through things. People experience things all the time. And when we're talking about trauma, it's many times like war veterans or those really
Hmm.
big things. And oh, well, I didn't experience that, so it's not that bad. I hear that all the time. It's
Yes,
not that
me
bad,
too. I hear that all the time too.
but they add up.
And
So,
trauma is trauma. Your brain doesn't know the difference between trauma. So, yeah, you didn't serve in combat and lose a limb, but your brain still went through a trauma. It still needs to be processed. It's not a competition of whose trauma was worse.
and that I think going back to the men piece, and this probably shows up for women as well, of different losses or challenges, but well, okay, it's not that bad. I don't need to seek help because that person had it worse. They
Mm.
can get help. That's for them, not for me. Then that trickles down because then there's other loved ones that are looking up to that person potentially that see, well, okay, he had it really bad, so my problems aren't that bad. I don't need to go get help or even talk to someone. Doesn't even have to be getting help, but like sharing it with someone can be really important just to get it out when we're thinking about mental health and working on the stigma piece of it, what do you think are some different ways that we can try and eliminate the stigma or make it less?
So locally, we just recently had a walk to end suicide, and one of the county executives was involved, who is a man. And that really meant a lot to me because he got up and he was talking about, the walk to end suicide and mental health within the county. And seeing that coming from a grown, established man and having him speak to his community and say, get help if you need it. It is a strength, not a weakness.
Mm.
I think that's a really good way. Is just yeah, we need more men to talk about mental health openly and make it okay. Because if you're a man and you're talking about mental health openly, you're going to make other men feel comfortable talking about it. Where they're like, whoa, I never knew you were going through that. Let's talk. This is what I'm going through. And it opens that conversation up. Talking about it is number one.
That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not have to be in a professional setting. It can be with the guys, hang out, but just share that you had a tough day. I heard this recently that softness is a luxury. And I thought it was really interesting because looking at it in terms of, okay, I'm hard and I don't have to share the things that are going on, back to that strength piece of, okay, I'm stronger for not talking about it. We're just bearing it and building it up. When we're able to share the things and get them out, it's going to open up that conversation not only to the other guys, but to just the other people in our lives around us to know that, wow, okay, maybe that thing that we went through was tough. And we just didn't talk about it because we didn't want anybody to know that it was tough. So many things are kept within families. Families many times talk about not wanting to share things that are going on because we don't want to be viewed as less than. And it makes me so sad that someone experiencing a challenge would make them feel less than
Mhm.
when it has nothing to do with how good we are, our worth, who we are as a person. I think it's a huge strength to be able to talk about that and to be able to share what you're experiencing because maybe someone else that's in your life might be experiencing something similar and not know how to talk about it.
And also listening when people talk. So if someone in your life is telling you about what's going on and to you it seems really heavy, say something.
Yeah.
Like if Justin were to tell me like that his entire life was falling apart and I was just like, wow, that's amazing. How do you handle that? You're so strong that you can just handle all of that.
That's where it slips into that normal conversation, right?
Yes, because now Justin's going to say like, yes, I am strong. I definitely wasn't reaching out for help or support. I was reaching out because I'm strong. So just paying attention to what people are saying and how you're responding instead of like, wow, I don't know how you do it. Say like, wow, that is a lot. Is there anything you need support wise or kind of opening up that conversation? Because especially with men, they will tell you what an awful day they had, but they won't tell you always how it has affected them mentally. So if you have a loved one who is telling you, that their day was just awful from start to finish, don't just brush it off.
Yeah.
Ask them like, wow, how is that impacting you? Because for me, that would be really hard. I would struggle with that.
A change that I've more recently made, and I think this was because of being more trauma informed, and so makes sense with doing what we do for work to be able to ask more of the questions or validate a little bit more. But it's simple shifts in our communication that can really show up. And so something that I had more recently started doing is telling someone that I appreciate them sharing something.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
I have noticed that you have said that a lot more.
Because I do. I appreciate someone actually sharing something with me rather than the surface level conversation. I don't want to hear that your day is fine. What does that even mean? So I want to share with someone that, wow, I appreciate you having that conversation with me and appreciating them being vulnerable. Society can be really hard to be vulnerable. Many times that can be viewed as a weakness as well.
Oh, yeah.
We're just simple validation. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you sharing that with me. It can go a really long way. Can you think of any other phrases that might make someone feel validated?
Oh, God, on the spot. Well, I can't. Not after that. I love it when you tell clients, when I hear that, when you're like, I really appreciate you sharing that. At first, I was just like, oh, that's new. But I have seen how you have said that, and then they keep sharing. And then you say like, "Wow, that was a really hard thing to talk about. I appreciate that." And then they just keep talking, and I'm like, "Wow." So I have actually started saying that more because I do appreciate when people share things. I just don't always say that, but yeah, I've seen the impact that that has had.
For so many people, we go through just life on autopilot and we don't really feel like, not that nobody cares, but we don't really feel like our day to day has value. And those things that we experience throughout the day have a big impact. And then if we go to sleep and we just bottle it up, and then the next day and we have another tough day, what if we're having 2 weeks of a really tough day and then we just explode?
Right.
And then we don't know where it's coming from. Many times, or almost always, there's things that are leading up to that. There's things that are leading up to those explosive or those anger outbursts or big emotional outbursts that could have, I don't want to say be prevented, because sometimes we're just going to have big reactions, but it's the straw that broke the camel's back. It's that one last thing that then I couldn't handle it. And the things that we were probably upset about were not that big. It was probably like our partner leaving the mustard on the counter or someone cutting us off in traffic, but they all just add up and then we've had a rough day.
And then to have to explain to someone why you completely just lost it because they left the mustard out is just a whole other aspect.
Because then there's 2 weeks worth of stuff that is coming out,
Mhm.
where maybe if we're more purposeful or having good intent when we're having that conversation, we're able to resolve that more so in real time of like, oh, wow, yeah, that was tough, rather
Mhm.
than it in our head continuously being tough, going to that next decision, going to the next piece.
And everyone knows, I absolutely adore my husband, but I have had to try to get him out of that habit of bottling things up because then after a while, all of a sudden it would come out and where it's like, well, 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, dude, why didn't you tell me 3 weeks ago? I would have fixed it. I would have addressed it. I would have apologized. Like I didn't know. And he was like, it wasn't a big deal at the time. And I'm like, but you've carried it with you for 3 weeks. Like, so I have been trying to get him out of that habit
Mhm.
because it is. And I do think it's a thing among men is they just shove it down and
Because they don't think it was a big deal at the moment.
mhm.
Because we live in such a fast-paced society that it's hard to process things in the moment.
Mhm.
That's where having good communication with whoever, it can be the guys at work, it can be family, it can be whoever it is, as long as we're having some resource to be able to share the things that are going on, because then whoever's on the receiving end of that, oh, you've been dealing with that for 3 weeks. And for you or for me, it was in and out because it wasn't meant in a different way.
Mhm.
We didn't even know that it was something that had that much of an impact, when it's a lot easier to fix it in real time than 3 weeks later to try and explain what was going on. They've already then built up that frustration, the anger. Now you're trying to resolve those emotions too, when maybe we just really misspoke or we didn't mean something. So communication is a huge piece.
100%. Yes.
Also, language. The language that we're using, I think, can really have a big impact on stigma. If back to like the strength and weakness. And I don't know exactly how to change those words entirely, but maybe being more purposeful in the way that we're using strength of, wow, you're really strong for being able to work through something, rather than it just being strong that you're not talking about it.
It reminds me of did you see Encanto? No. The Disney movie? It reminds me of Luisa because she is the very strong sister and she just keeps taking on more and more and more. And then she sings a song about how she has the entire world that she is holding up, and she feels like she can't falter at all, or everything will come crashing down. And like that really resonated with me because sometimes it does feel like that. But she has always been known to the family as the strong one, so she couldn't say anything. And then when she finally does, it's like a huge shift and relief. And you gotta watch Encanto. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so
What a good
good.
message.
It is. Yeah. That you don't have to carry everything. And you can talk about how, yes, you are the strong one, but it's hard. Like your job is hard.
With talking about strength or talking about being in control, there are so many things that are outside of our control that many times we pick up and we feel like it's our responsibility, or we feel like we have to carry it, and it's not even ours to hold. But without talking about that, our brain convinces us that we have to because maybe we've had to in the past. Maybe we've been put in positions early in our life that we had to hold those things. We may not have to. So we might be holding things that someone else could help with or isn't even ours to hold. Hmm. When we're thinking about the language piece, it can just be trying to be compassionate and being able to give someone just the validation that something is tough.
Mhm.
I know for me personally, easy to go on the side of toxic positivity. Just be like, "Oh, it's gonna be okay."
Oh, I know.
Sometimes things are really tough and it's gonna take a little bit to work through,
I know. Sometimes I just want to be like, it'll all be okay, but like, it might not be. Let's not give false hope. No, it might really suck.
and it's okay for it to suck.
Mm-hmm.
Again, back to the language piece, just being mindful of what we're saying, when we're saying it, and then also allowing that other person to have that space. Most people just want to be able to talk. And so maybe they don't need anything from us. Maybe they just need us to give a little bit of validation. Maybe it's nodding in agreement or saying that we appreciate them sharing it and just being mindful to not use language that can be really defeating or that can be negative in the sense of then it's putting more pressure on the person that's actually deciding to share something. Trying to be as neutral as possible rather than judgment. I guess that might be
Mm-hmm.
a way to say it. So if it can come out as judgmental, maybe we don't need to share that right at the moment. Maybe they don't want us to fix the problem at the moment.
Something that I've gotten into the habit of is, especially with friends and family, is they'll come to me and I will say, do you do you want advice? Do you want to vent? Do you want me to be angry with you? What do you need from me? And then that really helps because then they will say, I want advice or I want to vent. So that way I know, like, okay, if you just want to vent, then I'm not going to say a word. You can be 100% in the wrong. I am not going to give you advice. I'm not going to say a word. You just vent to me. So I try to start conversations that I know are going to be tough. I use that question and it helps a lot.
I can imagine it does. So then you know your expectation in it.
And I've started doing that too when I will call someone and and I will say, I don't want your advice. I don't want to hear if I was right or wrong. I am just going to vent to you and I just want you to nod along and go about your day. So just clear communication.
I think that's been a common theme of being able to challenge stigma is the communication piece. When we understand or even make an attempt to understand what someone is going through, it makes them more of a human rather than being a problem. So being able to just have a little bit of insight on what someone is going through, it makes it more relatable. And then it's a lot easier for them to feel validated in what they're sharing, and then you to be able to see it from their point of view because everybody walks through life with different perception. So something that might be a really big deal to you, to me, when I first hear it, may not be that big of a deal. Many times there's something underneath it, and just being able to share it and get it out can help the person who is sharing it tremendously, but then also the person who is on the receiving end of that, of just being able to be there and show up. Many times that's just what people need is there to be space.
I feel like it's the same with kids too. I've noticed like my son will be upset about things and my knee-jerk reaction is like, that's really not a big deal. Like that's not something you need to be crying about. So I have to catch myself. And I do usually. I validate that I totally understand why this situation is upsetting you. Like I get it. I understand. I don't agree most of the time because usually it's kid stuff. And I'm like, there's more in the world that you need to worry about. But in that moment, just validating. And now that you say that, I do say to Richard all the time, like, thank you for telling me what you were upset about. So yeah, just validating and jeez, for the love of God, stop telling your boys not to cry, please. They can cry. It's okay. It's not going to make them I don't even know what the concern is. Yeah. It's not going to make them weak. I don't know. It's not going to make them unsuccessful. A boy that can cry and share his feelings, I promise when he grows up, his future partner will thank you.
A huge piece, and the more that we pick up when we're younger that we're not supposed to share these things, the more stunted our emotional intelligence are going to be, and we're not going to be as in tune with people. We're not going to be as insightful. We might miss opportunities in our life because of that, because we weren't picking up what was going on around us. So truthfully, the more emotionally in tune we are, the more we might be able to be successful. So I truly think it's the opposite of that. The more that we're closed off and the more that we are told not to share things, the more we're going to then close off from the world because we are not able to let people in because we're trying to deal with all of it by ourselves.
Emotional intelligence. I love it.
So, thinking about stigma, there are so many things that factor into stigma, and it's degrading language. It can just be language that we're not even thinking about that is bad, but sometimes it can be intended with good intentions, but come off maybe not as supportive. So, takeaway from this is not to be that we're doing everything wrong. It can just be that we can show up and make space for someone a little bit differently. When dealing with stigma, challenging it can be so important because we have to be able to work through it and know that it's okay on the other side. And I think so many times we stay stuck in the stigma because we think the other side is going to be worse. And truly, the other side is so much better.
Mhm.
Of once we're able to get past that part, whether it's what we have in our own head that's making us not share things or the environment that we're in, once we find that safe place to be able to share whatever it is, and it can be with friends, it can be with support, it can be with professional help, wherever that has to be for us, it is so much better on the opposite side of that because we're able to think more clearly.
Mhm.
We're also able to be more emotionally in tune with the people around us. And that makes a big difference in those relationships.
Yeah,
It's
for
going to be
sure.
more rewarding. Any other ways that you think stigma shows up, maybe specifically in childhood, or where those seeds are planted in child?
Other than just the toxic masculinity
Hmm.
and telling boys not to cry. And also, like I said, just kind of dismissing stuff because if your kid comes and their brain rot got stolen and steal a brain rot on Roblox and they're just devastated and you don't want to say like suck it up, it's just a game, which I have to admit I did and I felt so bad. It like slipped out, guys. It slipped out. Richard was sobbing because his brain rot got stolen on Roblox, and without even like stopping to think, I was like, the game is called Steal a Brain Rot. That's the whole point of the game. I don't understand why you're upset. Like, this is not something to be upset about. So I was kicking myself for that one. It happens.
It
It
shows up.
does.
I think it's important with the consistency piece. Consistently being able to make that space for specifically kids, but the other people in our life, it can go a really long way. I think it can be also setting unrealistic expectations for kids to deal with their emotions in a certain way, or just because like an adult deals with it a certain way, thinking that the kid has to deal with it that way, or having it be that someone is too emotional or too sensitive, then they might take that as, okay, I share too much and I don't want to share anything anymore. So then we're never sharing the things that are going on. That then leads to what if something really big is going on and we didn't feel as comfortable sharing the small thing? We're then not going
Mm-hmm.
to share the big thing that's going on because it was
Yeah.
too much for whoever to handle. It doesn't have to be a parent, but it was too much then. So, like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with this big thing that happens? I can't share it. So then we're dealing with that on our own.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Things that maybe we really did need some help with.
Yep. I did take a step back and reapproach and say, like, I'm sorry. I realize that that game is very important to you. I did. I felt so bad. But I'm human. What are you going to
Hmm.
do?
That's the piece of it, right?
And I like that he sees me as a human, you know? Like, I do make mistakes and I do apologize for my mistakes. And sometimes I say things that I didn't mean to say and it comes out wrong. But I address it, which is important too.
I think that can be another piece to kind of hit on is we're not always going to do it, or we're probably never going to do it perfectly, but knowing that we're able to then go back and readdress it and you can have that tough conversation more than once. Many times those big conversations should be had more than once,
Mm.
followed up on where I think so commonly like that initial conversation happens, it was tough for whoever to be in it and then it's never brought up again. So the more that we talk about those things, the less uncomfortable it's going to be. So getting more comfortable in that discomfort and then like
Ooh,
kind of how we
getting
talked about in the
comfortable.
beginning.
I like that.
Yeah, getting comfortable in the discomfort. We talked about in the beginning where it would be tough for someone to share something initially and then not having that validation and then not talking about it all. Thinking about when we are talking to people, being able to go back and say, ooh, maybe I didn't do that right the first time, or I am able to think about it differently, where just because we initially reacted one way does not mean that has to be the outcome. We're able to go back and kind of back to this weakness piece. It's not a weakness to go back and say, "Hey, I thought about this differently. I didn't I didn't approach that the right way. I really do want to be supportive, but I know it didn't come out that way." That's not a weakness. I think that's a
No,
huge strength.
that's a huge strength.
Yeah.
I love that. If someone says that to me, I do not look at them like, "Oh, okay, you're weak." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank you."
Kind of back to the life being hard and always having to be hard, having to feel so firm in that first reaction, it can make sense to take some time to think about something. We talked about that on a different episode of taking time to think about something so you're making an informed choice rather than just responding or reacting to something. So, in that can also be, as we've talked a lot about showing up for someone, there can be a time that, like, hey, I really just can't take this on right at the moment. And being transparent about that too and saying, hey, I understand that you have a lot going on. I also have a lot going on right at the moment. Can we have a different time to talk about this? Is there someone else that you can reach out to? So, kind of knowing our limit or our capacities
Mhm.
when
Boundaries.
yeah, because if we say, "Yep, I can take it on, share whatever with me," and then we really didn't have that capacity to do it, and then what if we show up in a harmful way to
Mhm.
that person? We respond and we invalidate what they're experiencing because, "Oh my goodness, just get over it. Life is so much tougher than that." They're probably never gonna share something again
Yeah.
because they had a bad initial reaction. The more uncomfortable we are in that, we're not going to try it again and say, oh, yeah, it didn't work the last time. I'm going to definitely think that it works this time. And then we might have a really tough time ever getting that opportunity to talk about something again with someone. So, between communication, language, just being mindful and knowing ourselves, knowing our own boundaries, love
Yes.
that you said that. Knowing our own boundaries when it comes to something and being able to be mindful of how we're showing up for that person, I think are some really important things when we're talking about stigma because we all have similarities. I'm sure the more that we might talk to someone that is going through something, we might realize that we've experienced something similar or we know someone that's experienced something similar. And then we can find that similarity rather than just being focused on the differences.
Yeah. Well said.
So, thinking about stigma, it's something that exists in a lot of different areas, but mental health, it is huge. So,
Mhm.
being able to just do some small, simple things to make it a little bit easier to share what we have going on.
I do feel like we're moving in the right direction. Um,
Yes.
as a community, I think we're moving in the right direction. We are destigmatizing it, but there's still a long way to go.
Mm,
But I'm happy with the direction that it's going in.
yeah. And would you agree that it starts in like these small conversations?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like I said, I appreciate the county executive getting up on a stage and talking about it. The commercials are great, but it starts on the micro level. Like it starts with conversations with friends, peers, colleagues. Yeah, you need both micro and macro.
Yeah. So, being able to have it show up like in our own homes and then also in the community, but it has to start somewhere. And I definitely agree. It starts in those small conversations of showing someone support. Then they'll probably pass that on to someone else because it felt good. It felt good to share something. So then we might be another listening ear. And what if that listening ear is just at the right time for the right person
Right.
before they're at their wits' end? Maybe you're the only person that listened that
Mm-hmm.
entire day and it didn't really take much from us, but it might have meant a lot to someone else.
Yes.
Very good. So, thank you guys for joining us
Yes. Thank you.
for talking about stigma and how we can try and reduce stigma around mental health. If there's anything that we missed or anything that we can go over a little bit more, we'd love to. So, share some comments, make sure we're liking and subscribing so that you can hear us when we're coming out with new episodes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.